Hi everyone, welcome back. Thank you so much for sticking with us and for continuing to being committed to creating new healthful habits and sticking to them, hopefully, in this, our week 3 of Taking Off the Pressure, one of the programs in our 4-week fast track series. My name is Dina D'Alessandro, registered dietitian, nutritionist, founder and chief executive life changer at DishWithDina. I have helped hundreds of patients and clients over the past few years meet their health and wellness goals, and I hope that I do the same for you. There are 4 objectives with all of these programs that we do for you, including this one, which is Taking Off the Pressure, where we are going to educate you and help you manage an existing condition or diagnosis of hypertension, or at least help you reduce your risk of getting high blood pressure and cardiovascular disease-related conditions down the line. So the first objective for this program is to get you to know and understand your numbers, right? Your blood pressure readings that we talked about in the previous weeks, and also some of your lifestyle habits in order to give you a better sense of setting a baseline up for yourself and then being able to get you to create sustainable future goals for yourself as well. The second objective is to help you understand the effects of sodium in the body. We talked about food and nutrition a little bit last week. We'll talk a little bit more about that now in this video, along with some other factors that play a role in heart health. The third objective is to help you develop heart-healthy weekly meal plans and some food and nutrition strategies that support your overall well-being. And the fourth objective is to get you to engage and interact with a community of like-minded people who are looking to manage their current diagnoses, as we said, or other heart-related conditions, and or reduce their risk as well of hypertension and cardiovascular disease. So we hope that you accomplish all of those things by the end of this program. So now we are in week 3. So this week we will discuss some cooking components, not meaning like doing a food demo or anything like that, but putting together meal prep skills for you and strategies to help you create weekly meal plans that will help you support your heart health, being mindful of that sodium intake. And to start, we're going to share some resources with you as well that will help you guide the meal planning for the weeks to come. So I'm going to put up some graphics here and explain a little bit about the things that we have come across. And by the way, I know it's just me here on the video whenever you see me. I do say we. I have a small crew of people that help me research information, look up the most prominent, prevalent, and current research and studies, and also keep me up to date on anything that we're talking about when it comes to particular chronic conditions. As a registered dietitian, that is my role, to relay and disseminate information to you, the general public, that helps bridge that gap, right? So you've maybe gone to the doctor, gotten a diagnosis, and not really gotten a lot of information from there, or maybe you were not given a referral to a dietitian. So I'm here to step in and guide you a little bit along the way. We're going to discuss the DASH diet eating plan. And when I say the word diet, I do not mean something like calorie restriction where you're going to be forced to cut out certain food groups in order to lose weight. We're not talking about that at all. We're just talking more about like a general eating plan. So something that we have, as far as the registered dietitian profession, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and the USDA, the government in the United States here that oversees our food recommendations, we've recommended following the DASH diet eating plan for people who have hypertension or are at risk for hypertension, cardiovascular disease, heart issues, etc. DASH is an acronym that stands for the Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. So there you go. Interestingly enough, though, even though we discussed last week and the week prior, I believe, that the role of sodium, salt in your food, right? We talked about some processed foods and packaged foods and how that can potentially elevate your blood pressure. This is not a low sodium diet. It's just about being more mindful about sodium intake. And last week we talked a little bit about how potassium-rich foods can kind of offset the sodium in your blood. So really we're focusing on whole, nutrient-dense, high-fiber foods because these are high in potassium. Things like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, and beans. Sticking to potentially low-fat or non-fat dairy, under normal circumstances, I don't really promote anything low-fat because, as I mentioned in week 2, whenever a particular ingredient that is that creates palatability, right? Something that makes something taste good. So fat and sugar and salt are three things that make your food taste good. So if fat in this particular case is removed from a food, then other things could potentially be placed in there to add that element of flavor there. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is when it comes to heart health, though, dietary fats like eggs and cheese and butter and dairy and those types of products could potentially play a role with cholesterol. We'll talk a little bit more about that in another video series about what can elevate your cholesterol levels. Right now we're talking specifically about hypertension, which is just blood pressure, but it all is kind of related because it's got to do with your health, your heart rather. So the low-fat or non-fat dairy recommendation is what's recommended by the DASH diet program. So in this particular case, I would say just be conscientious. If you don't have a history of cholesterol, then maybe you can be okay with these, within reason. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as far as serving sizes and that goes as well. Or you can also go here or here to check out the Gaining Kitchen Confidence program, where I talk a lot about the My Plate recommendations of food groups, etc. The last bullet on that list as far as foods that are going to be promoting heart healthiness for you are lean meats, fish, and poultry. So those are some items that are listed on the foods that we're recommending for you if you're dealing with hypertension. Nothing crazy here, right? Like you've heard all of this before. It's just stuff that sometimes slips from our minds a little bit. Now, understandably, you might not have the budget or the time or the energy to go and prepare all these foods. But again, we're talking about the majority of the foods that you're eating to be a little bit more on the health conscious realm. They can be frozen, they can be processed, just being mindful of how much sodium is in that, as we said before, and then taking this guidance, these food groups guidance into account as well. Before I continue, please do as I always ask you to do. Give a like to this video if you think there's something beneficial in there for you. Subscribe to the channel in general because there's a lot of juicy stuff that we have, kind of theme related as far as general nutrition guidance and also very specific to certain chronic conditions, much like we're doing right now. And pass it along. Share it with people that you think might find it interesting as well. The next item on the list here is salt substitution. So since we're talking about sodium and recommendations of how much, or at least, like the maximum amount that we would hope that you would eat if you're suffering from hypertension or you have, or at risk for high blood pressure issues and heart health issues, then the recommendation would be conscientious of salt, your salt intake. So if you are trying to be aware of how much processed and packaged foods you're getting, then that could definitely reduce the amount of sodium that you're getting in general, because as we mentioned last week, most of the salt intake that comes from American diets are from packaged and processed foods. So if you're creating meals at home, unless you're super heavy-handed with the salt shaker, it's a little hard to get that high up there, but you want to be conscientious. So you can do things like substituting salt with other ingredients. Now, when you take the salt out of something, the flavor goes away, so you want to make sure that you're kind of accommodating that. And there are things like fresh herbs, fresh or roasted garlic, raw or sauteed onion, lemon juice, lemon zest, grated ginger, lots of different kinds of herbs and spices, even Mrs. Dash, which is a name brand salt substitute. That actually tastes very much like it, and also I believe comes in different kinds of flavors like lemon herb, garlic flavored I believe is in there too, and so you can use that in place of your salt. The only recommendation I might have about that though, much like I said last week with the potassium discussion, is if you are suffering from a coexisting condition which is related to your kidneys. So if you have a renal disease, renal issues, chronic kidney disease, something like that, some salt substitutes may contain what's called potassium chloride, right? So we talked about salt is technically sodium chloride, so two minerals, two elements on the periodic chart, that is sodium chloride. So instead of sodium's taken out and potassium is put in. Potassium chloride becomes the salt substitute. But if you're dealing with chronic kidney disease or renal related issues, potassium usually is something that you're supposed to use sparingly. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that if you had existing or coexisting kidney disease issue. And then we're going to get into weekly meal planning, heart healthy types of foods and food groups, and we're going to give you a template for all of that, as we always do. And this is going to be a visual that we're going to share with you here based on different kinds of servings and food groups a day. So let's get into that now. Using your weekly meal plan template, we're going to focus on heart healthy combinations, and we're going to walk you through the food groups list as well. What would be ideal or recommended is every day you try to do the best you can with creating meals around these recommendations. To start, plant-based proteins. These are very high in potassium and high in fiber. They're somewhat starchy-ish, but they don't necessarily raise the blood pressure or the blood sugar levels, and they keep you quite full for a long time, so they help keep you satisfied. These are things like beans, chickpeas, peas, lentils, nuts, nut butters, and seeds. Now, the only thing that I'm going to add in here is if you are purchasing these foods in a canned form or a jarred form, be mindful of the ingredients. Go back to last week, take a look at what we talked about with the nutrition facts label. We want to make sure that if you have beans or anything that's in canned form, that there's not an excessive amount of sodium in there, or if there is, you can unfortunately dump out the liquid and kind of like rinse off your beans, whatever the contents in there are. When it comes to nut butters, same thing. I've said this a million times, peanut butter only needs like a teeny pinch of salt, that's it. It doesn't need a ton of salt or really added sugar, added oil, nothing like that, just ground roasted nuts. Unfortunately, it's a little bit more expensive to purchase that, because when you add all those other things in, it drops the price, and that's how the manufacturer is able to provide you with some discounted foods. So I'm understanding here, you know, it has to be budget friendly, so just be mindful of how much you're using of that if it is a little bit higher in sodium, so be conscientious of that. And seeds are some things that are overlooked, I think. You know, smash up a whole bunch of pumpkin seeds, ground up some flax seeds and add them to anything from smoothies to your salads, and come up with some creative items on there. Again, as I said, while we're not doing like hands-on food demos here, we will link below to some recommended recipe generators that we think might be interesting for you to use and see how you can kind of come up with some creative ideas. The next food group we're going to talk about is fruit. We're looking to get about maybe 2 servings a day, not a whole lot, right? A couple of things, maybe once in the daytime and once in the after dinner or something along those lines. And this includes anything like the whole fruits that you see in your produce section: apples, pears, avocado, berries, cherries, grapes, citrus fruits, melons, whatever happens to be in season, whatever is affordable for you, we definitely encourage that. We also encourage anything that you can eat with the skin on, because that's going to give you a little bit more extra fiber. And I would say, if you, just as a side note here, if you have a pre-existing condition, a coexisting condition of type 1 or type 2 diabetes, I would say just be conscientious of how much fruit you are getting in the day if you feel like you're going over that 2 servings a day of that, because the natural sugars in the fruit might elevate your blood sugar depending on what else you're eating with it. Especially if it's like tropical or dried fruit. So just be conscientious of how many servings you're getting of that if it's not in its whole form. Okay, here we come to vegetables, one of my favorite things to talk about, but a lot of people aren't huge fans of veggies. Yeah, like 3 to 5 servings is what we're looking to aim for a day, and you can definitely mix and match a whole bunch of stuff here. So you can do side dishes, you can add some leafy greens, believe it or not, into some of your breakfast smoothies. I know it sounds weird, but I have a recipe that I will link to below about that. And if you eat a salad, I mean, you've kind of knocked off like 4 or 5 of those already. So things like the cruciferous vegetables. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before, but that's a family of food items, of vegetable items that are contain the family of broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, and kale. Then you have your leafy greens like spinach, Swiss chard, collards, things like asparagus, string beans, carrots, peppers, you know, really anything that's kind of vibrant and contains a lot of that fibrous goodness. They're very low in calories. I only bring that up because it seems like quite a lot of 5 servings is a lot, but it's not going to make you feel overstuffed. It's not going to take up your whole day with like a lot of excess calories. So you're going to add in other things to this and kind of mix and match the components of whatever you're doing as far as your weekly meal plan goes, but you're going to try and hit that serving. So we'll talk a little bit about later when we do the homework stuff, and I'll share with you about some ideas that I might have about that. And then last but not least, we're talking about grain foods. So again, if you enjoy these, then good on you. We look to about like 2 to 3 servings a day of grains, and that can be anything from brown rice to millet. I don't know if you use any of these kind of like ancient grains, but even popcorn. Popcorn is a great grain, a high fiber food. It's a great snack to use. Obviously, you know, we want you to make sure that you're not overdoing it with the excess oils and caramel coating or excessive amounts of salt. That's the whole purpose of the topic of what we're discussing here. But yeah, popcorn's cool. Quinoa, everybody loves, well, people I know love quinoa. I'm not a huge fan. I think kind of it tastes a little weird sometimes, but it's great for me to add to some of my salads that I enjoy eating, and then things like whole wheat pasta. So I bring up the whole wheat part of it because, again, we're trying to stay a little bit more focused on the health components of things, but in general, the majority of the foods that you're eating could be on that end of the whole wheat. And then if you want to do like a white version of your pastas or your rices, that's totally fine too. Just know that they are considered a little bit more refined. They could potentially elevate your blood sugar. So again, if you're dealing with a coexisting diagnosis of diabetes, that might be an issue for you. And yeah, that's about it. So we want to make sure that, you know, you're getting enough fiber and other kind of good healthy components, that the whole point being to help you reduce your risk of or manage your hypertension. I'm not going to repeat or duplicate a lot of the information that I've already created for the Gaining Kitchen Confidence program, so I'm going to link to that. And there we've shared with you how to do different lifestyle habit changes, like cooking at home more often, focusing on some of those more nutrient-dense foods, increasing the amount of natural whole foods that you are in comparison to some of the processed foods, and also asking you to be mindful of your portions. We said that last week too. You know, within reason, you can eat a little bit of everything, right? But if you end up putting a little bit more on your plate that you're not necessarily being mindful about, then double the amount of everything comes with it, not just the calories. Because again, I'm not really so concerned so much about that stuff, but the sodium content, the sugar content, and the fat content. So if you're working with a condition that is related to sodium intake and you end up doubling or tripling your portion sizes or your serving sizes at any one meal without really realizing that, that can double or triple the amount of sodium that you're getting in, and then that can play a role again as an effect of elevating your blood pressure. So I'll just share the links with the Gaining Kitchen Confidence series, and you can go click through that and we'll give you a little bit more guidance as far as looking to those recommendations and integrating that into this particular series, this particular program. All right, so it is homework time, and your homework is not a ton. I mean, you're now kind of getting to the point where you're ramping up and putting in a little bit of everything that you've learned and then combining all of that together this week. So you might want to write down these tasks, and if you do, there is an activity log that you can use to check off your list as you go on, or as you go. So the first homework assignment is, as always, fill out the goal agreement sheet. So as I said before, I'm going to give you some guidance on that, right? So the short-term goal, if you're not a big fruit and veggie type of person, or you're not into like whole foods as much and you're eating a ton of outside foods, a lot of processed foods, maybe dig a little bit deep and find out why. Is it because it's convenient? Is it because it's affordable? Like, what's going on there? And then if that's the case, when you are eating these outside foods, can you go for a low sodium version of something? So be kind of conscientious of your habits going forward, and or maybe add a new ingredient or a new one of those food groups that we recommended into your weekly meal plan. So find out what you're working with there, what might be on sale when you're going grocery shopping. Keep an eye out for some of these things. What do you already have on hand? I'm going to go ahead and refer you again to the Gaining Kitchen Confidence program, because that's pretty cool. You can go in and like learn about inventory in your kitchen and how to do weekly meal plan and prepping in there and finding out what you have on hand. So if you have a lot of boxed goods, packaged goods, and there's different levels of sodium in them, then maybe you might want to opt out some things and bring something else in the more whole version of that, or lower sodium version of that. So we give you a lot of information as always in these things. So, you know, pick something that's kind of close to you, whether it's a food, nutrition related habit, whether it's a habit related, like a behavioral related habit, right? Like I eat out a lot because I don't know. I've just been used to doing that. But really when I think about it, I can maybe do some things at home. I can maybe make a salad at home. I don't need to, pay money for that outside. So just kind of like see what's going on in the last couple of weeks of what might be triggering some aha moments for you, and write those down and create a short-term weekly goal for yourself. And again, that's usually going to be related to your long-term goal, which you did in the beginning of the program. So something that is going to get you into meeting that goal. Look at the food group template and the meal planning template. Take a look at whatever you're going shopping for, whatever is existing in your house. Make sure that you're label reading when you're doing these trips or you're creating these meals for yourself. And then use that as a guide. Like, you don't have to put every single day or every single meal in there if you don't want to, but it's a great idea to kind of sit down at the beginning of the week when you're going grocery shopping, and then when you come home with things, just kind of like put aside some things and go, you know what, I think maybe we can eat this that day, and maybe we'll do leftovers on that day, and then we'll do takeout on that day. And there might be a little bit more well-balancedness to the whole week long of your meal planning sessions there. And lastly, if you don't mind, head over to our private Facebook group and engage with the group that's going on there. We will prompt you and encourage some discussion there. Obviously, you do not have to share any private information with us as far as like your blood pressure readings or any physical exams that you might have had, but we would really love to find out what you're finding about this. Maybe your blood pressure readings are going down a little bit now that you're kind of being conscientious about that. Just say, I'm having success, and is anybody else here? I want to applaud that for you guys. You can comment below too. You don't necessarily have to go and join the Facebook group. That's fine. You can inform me down below. You can also head over to the DishWithDina.com website. You can enter your email address there. As I said, sometimes we do giveaways, sometimes we do newsletters, so it's always kind of nice to be part of that family and come away with a little bit more than just what these videos are giving you. There's also going to be a link to my online scheduler, so if you do require some more individualized help or guidance, I'm here for you. Whether it's a 15-minute quick little phone chat to find out where I can maybe lead you in the right direction, or if you really want to set up something a little bit more regular with me, or in the future, as I might be doing some group counseling sessions and you want to be a part of that, you're more than welcome to kind of drop a line, and I'll keep you posted as to when those things happen too. I tend to sometimes do lives on a lot of my social media platforms, so sometimes I'll be there. So again, you have a ton of different places that you can interact with me / my team, and we are more than happy to answer any of the food and nutrition related questions. Like, comment, subscribe to this channel, share it with people if you think it is helpful and beneficial. A lot of this information is quite simple, but it's just not necessarily given or provided over the course of your life, right? Like, I went to school for nutrition. I'm here to constantly be learning and listening about that stuff, but it's very easy to kind of divert from things that seem kind of simple, and then unfortunately we either put ourselves a little bit more at risk for certain chronic conditions, or if we are coming already in with those risk factors, as we said last week, there are some things that you can't necessarily modify, then it's nice to kind of know, here's what might help you support and promote health for you. So everything that has been discussed in this video, the downloadable materials, everything is linked below. As always, I'm so grateful to have you guys watch me and listen and hopefully learn and take away some good nuggets of info. We enjoy very much helping you, letting us help you embrace and develop new relationships with food, and we will see you again next week.